afternoon or morning to everyone who's attending today. I wanted to say hello and introduce myself. My name is Chelly Herren, and my name looks like Chelly, but I go by Shay. That's my nickname. And today I'm going to be talking about how to build a bulletproof transaction system inside of FollowUpBoss. So transaction management is something that agents and teams all struggle with having a great flow for, and costly software and complex spreadsheets or multiple systems that you're logging in and out of are how many teams and agents across the country handle transactions. But I'm going to show you how you can build a system right inside of FollowUpBoss that's highly scalable, whether you're doing 10 transactions a year or 500. And we're going to dig into all the details on how to make that happen today. I will give you a little bit of background about myself. I am a COO and have been in the real estate industry for about 20 years. I help run a team in Arizona called the Highland Group, and we are on track for about 375 to 400 transactions this year. And I oversee operations in the team. When a few years ago, when I stepped into this role, I was looking at how we manage everything and how transactions are managed specifically. And the team had bulletproof checklists that they had been using for a long time, but there was a lot of different pieces of software that we had to log in and out of. They had to log in and out of for transaction coordination, listing coordination. And I had just seen a webinar that FollowUpBoss had released automations, and I was really excited to test it out. So we took one of their checklists and built it out into an action plan in FollowUpBoss, and then built out deal stages and started automating our transaction tasks in FollowUpBoss. And it was pretty much a game changer. So that's really what kicked off this journey for the team that I manage. And from there, then I was asked to help other agents around the country to put some similar things in place so that they could save money on costly software, or just simplify their process or level up their process. Maybe they were running their transactions in a checklist on a Google Sheet or something like that. So this was a big level up for those teams or agents who wanted to get more leverage from their FollowUpBoss and their transaction management process. So today I'm going to talk about what the real cost of sloppy contract management is. I mean, that can be something that if you haven't put a great system in place, or you don't have a system for running your transaction checklist, it's a huge game changer. Many agents that I talk with have a really duct-taped together system where they're going into different checklists, or they're writing themselves post-it notes. Or I know when I was a busy agent and I was coordinating my own transactions, I would send myself emails and constantly, setting myself reminders in my phone of different things that needed to happen. And that can be really costly. All it takes is one missed deadline, or, mistaken email, or forgetting to tell a client something that's super important in writing, and that can cost you a deal. It can cost you the client because they become disgruntled. And so I'm going to show you today how to fix that situation and do it just within your FollowUpBoss, and you don't have to hire anyone else or add anyone to your team or hire an admin. So today I'm going to walk you through how you can solve that problem of having sloppy or sort of messy systems for transaction management. Blown deals is, like I talked about, something that is sadly something that I've seen happen more times than I care to count, where agents are missing a deadline, or they're missing submitting the inspection documents to the list agent, missing loan approval deadline, whatever those different checklist items are that are super important to your state. It can be really, really detrimental to a contract process if you miss a deadline. Last minute chaos causes tons of agent burnout. So you're constantly scrambling, trying to figure out what your next due date is when you get really busy. I've seen this happen with agents who scale quickly and they just don't have the right systems in place and they're struggling to keep up with all the business that they're generating. It's a great thing to have a ton of business, but it's hard to keep track of all of the different dates and deadlines, and the transaction process is fairly complex regardless of what state you're in. And so having a bulletproof system to manage all of that is super, super important. Angry clients can be lost referrals, reworking different, processes or going back over tasks to see that they're done prior to certain compliance deadlines. All those types of things can create quite a bit of stress and pain inside the real estate transaction. So our goal would be to solve this with this system. I've gone over this, but if you're relying on memory or calendar reminders, you have documents scattered all over the place with email or maybe your DocuSign or your Drive, you're lacking a centralized checklist, no system for tracking executed docs or due dates, this is all for you. And I'm going to show you exactly how to fix all these problems. So ideally, we'd like to get you to this place where all deal timelines are in one place. So you have no more missed reminders. Your client emails are drafted and final and you get to edit those emails to be your voice. So there's templates that you can buy or build yourself. And then all of your emails have your voice. They have your state's compliance information. They have everything that you might want to see in your communication with a client, but it's all built one time in FollowUpBoss. And then each time that you send that email template, when you're at that stage of the checklist, you have the ability to go in and send that email when the time is correct. So maybe it's an intro to a client or an intro to a lender or a title company, and you simply hit send. Here's a screenshot of what the FollowUpBoss page looks like, and I'm going to actually switch over to my live FollowUpBoss here to give you a better view because that screenshot ended up a little bit small. So here in FollowUpBoss, you can see that there are all the tasks for the transaction. There's some notes that go on the file as to what's under contract, and you can set up some email templates, which I'll show you in just a minute how to do. But this is an example of what a transaction checklist inside of FollowUpBoss that's attached to a buyer looks like. So really keeps you in great shape as far as like what your next task is. And then here you can go in and let's just say that there's a task that's very time specific in your contract process or in your state where you need to have inspections turned in by a certain day. All of these tasks are customizable. So you can go in and remind yourself to submit your inspection documents by a certain day, or you can set a reminder to get reminded on a certain day. You can assign these tasks to different people inside your FollowUpBoss. So if you're a team that has a TC, then you can assign tasks to the TC. Or if you want these assigned to yourself, they can be assigned to you. Maybe you have an assistant that you want them assigned to. So tons of flexibility there. You can set up all these assignments on the global level so that you can, every single time you have a new transaction, they're assigned to the same person. But then you also have the flexibility on each transaction to go in and assign different tasks to different people within your team if that's how you operate. So really super flexible there as far as what can be done. As everybody has a broker, everyone has compliance, depending on what state you're in, it all looks just a little bit different. But making sure that your TC knows exactly what to do when, making sure that you know exactly what to do and when. You can have different tasks inside of your FollowUpBoss that show deposit verifications or updating the broker file, like add transaction documents to your broker file. Whatever that looks like for you, these tasks can be customized to exactly what you would like them to say based on what your broker requires. So, like we're talking about today, there's a lot of teams or agents who use FollowUpBoss for lead follow-up, but putting your transaction management system right inside the lead's profile so that you take this person from, say, a lead all the way through to a pending buyer and a closed buyer and then a past client is super, super powerful. Because if you work as just a solo, you have all your information here. If you work with an assistant, all your information's here. If you work with a TC, or even if you run a team of pretty much any size, everybody can see the same information. Your agents, if you're running a team, can see exactly what tasks are coming up next or what the TC has completed. These pre-written email templates keep everything really succinct as far as how your team is communicating with their leads. So it's really an incredible way for you to keep everybody on the same page. Or if you're a solo agent, keep all your information in one place. This is an example of the custom fields that you can put into FollowUpBoss, where you can have all the different dates and contract information that is necessary to keep track of. And then those dates can populate these emails that are custom templated emails where you could write out all the things that you want to share with your buyer when they go under contract, or your seller, or when they get listed. And then all the important dates can be auto-populated into these emails along the contract process. So you go in and enter the key information in your custom fields here one time, and then all that information flows right through to these email templates that then your transaction task list will task you to send when it's appropriate. Like right when you get a new contract, there would be an intro to the attorney, escrow, or title. There's an intro to the lender. So you can create all these different tasks to send these different email templates at the time frame that is necessary for them to send based on your state and your contract process. So pretty cool what you can do with all the different features. And I'm going to keep walking through some of the features of the things that you can do in FollowUpBoss to create this transaction management system. But it's pretty amazing what the benefits are. You can structure the buyer and seller pipelines, so I'll show you that in just a moment. Smart task reminders, so like I was just showing you, you can set up to have task reminders based on what needs to happen next in the checklist. And then those reminders can pop up in your calendar, so you can really keep on task, or if you're a TC, keep your agent on task. If you're an agent that has an assistant, your assistant can be reminding you or themselves of certain things. So really useful there. Just incredible amount of efficiency once you get this built out, because everything's in one place. You can be laying in bed in the middle of the night thinking about when your inspection deadline is, and you can look it up on your phone. If you have an Apple device, you can look up custom fields on your phone, so you can see any of the custom fields like I just showed on that page right here on the left-hand side. All this data is visible on the mobile app. If you're a Droid user, unfortunately, they haven't released that yet, but regardless, still having all that information is at your fingertips is so nice, even if it's through your laptop or through your FollowUpBoss platform. So moving on to some of the things that you would want to create if you were to put this all in place. Having your deals all set up for both buyers and sellers would be one of the fundamental key stages or key starting points. So creating pipelines for the contracts that you want to track. So we find it really useful to have a buyer broker deal pipeline so that you can see what those buyer brokers are that you have in place and tie them back to the client's client's contact record. And you have the ability to set yourself deadlines and things like that as to when those are going to expire. Really nice for all the newer NAR buyer broker stuff if you're trying to figure out how to keep track of the buyer brokers that you've put in place. A pending buyer pipeline, closed buyer pipeline, and then canceled buyer pipeline. So this is super great for a lot of different reasons. One, it will help you keep track of your business and what you have going on and stay on the same page as other people in your team, or maybe your assistant, or just if you're a solo agent, just keep an idea of what you have going. And then two, it also helps you keep track of like your pipeline, where, what commissions you have coming your way, how you're going to get paid, all the things that we need to think about as agents as we're building a business or building out a pipeline for the year. On the seller side, same thing. If you create like a pre-listing stage, active on MLS stage, and then a closed, canceled, and these are a little bit out of whack. Closed, pending, canceled. There's the TC Assist is the build in FollowUpBoss that I created. For those of you who don't want to do this yourself, I've partnered with Key Technologies to implement this into your FollowUpBoss. And so when we put this into your FollowUpBoss, there is a build that we have for Canada. So I was moving those deal pipelines around, but you can see how flexible that is. When you create these deal pipelines, you can go in and drag the different deal stages around and have the ability to make different pipelines that make sense to you, to your business. Maybe you want to track the deals that are through inspections, or like a lot of people would say, active on MLS, pre-listing would be signed listing agreement, active on MLS, pending, and then you might have one more stage for post-inspection period, or firm transaction is what it's called in Canada. And then closed transactions, you can keep track of those in a separate pipeline. And then canceled or expired would be obvious, any of the deals that don't hold together. Each of these deal stages can be set up through automations to fire off a different task list. So that's where there's really magic in this system. Not only are you getting all the reporting off of deals, but you're also having the ability to go and attach a checklist to, for instance, a listed property. So all the tasks that need to happen when you've just listed a property. And then when it goes active on MLS, a whole other set of tasks. And then when it goes pending, et cetera, et cetera. So just tons of flexibility there to make that really work well. So I showed the pipelines. So then when it comes to creating those checklists, a transaction checklist in FollowUpBoss is also called an action plan. So creating checklists or action plans around each of these deal stages is the next step after you get the deals created and the pipelines created. So then you would want to go in and create a buyer broker checklist, a pending buyer seller checklist, closed, contingent checklist, canceled, withdrawn, expired, and then the seller listing checklist. So each one of these different stages that I just showed you in the deals section has its own checklist. So for instance, if a transaction cancels, what needs to happen? The sign needs to come down. If it's a listing, it needs to be canceled in MLS. The client needs some reach out. They need to be restaged. So what are all the things that need to happen when that occurs? Reminders and examples that you can show, that I can show you here. We did a little bit of this a minute ago in the task list, but basically all of the tasks that you create inside the action plan based on the deal stage can then be set up as reminders. There's like critical dates in pretty much every state that I've come across that the contract mandates. Some examples would be earnest money due date, inspection deadline, appraisal order deadline, loan commitment, final walkthrough, closing. Depending on what state you're in, there's specific dates that you need to track on behalf of your client and make sure that you're compliant with your broker and compliant with the contract stages. So every stage triggers these different checklists, but then those can be tracked with a very clear set time frame. So for instance, if a loan status update is required in your contract on certain days, or if there's broker reviews along the way, or a final broker review, all those dates can be modified to match whatever the contract timeline is in your state, or the contract timeline is for the buyer or seller that you've written the contract for. So all of that has some flexibility with a little bit of customization right at the beginning of the transaction. You can go in and edit any one of these dates that you have set up in your action plan to match the dates of the contract. So you can push these dates around or change the tasks and the days that you want to be reminded to do them. This is an example of how the calendar looks in FollowUpBoss when you have tasks that are assigned. And again, I'll go over to my live demo page so that you can see that. So here you can see that on June 2nd, I was tasked to do these two things, and that shows up in my FollowUpBoss calendar as two tasks that need to be done that day. So that's an example of the way that you can remind yourself of what needs to be done in FollowUpBoss. If you're using an integrated Google Calendar, you can actually get those Google Calendar reminders inside of your Google Calendar as well on your phone. Or just any of like the calendar tools that you use in Google can also be these transaction tasks can be pushed to there. So super, super useful if you're trying to set up a system for all of that. One of my favorite features is the contract and communication templates that can be set up. So email templates or text templates in FollowUpBoss can all be set up with your own language, your own wording, your own, the way that you would want to communicate to a client. And you can draft these emails out and then save them as a template. You can pull in the custom fields that you've already added to FollowUpBoss with the key points of the contract or the key data that you want to keep track of or convey to the buyer or seller. And each one of these transaction templates are so easy to use. They populate right into the transactions, into the contact. And then you can be tasked in the task list to send certain ones at certain times. So if we go back to one of the examples on my FollowUpBoss, for instance, if you just opened up a new pending buyer and the task is to send the intro at accepted offer email template, you can come up with a naming system. So you can say like BTC03, let's just say. And if we go in here and get ready to send that template, you can come in here and type in /BTC03, and that will pull in that email template that you've already pre-populated. And then this one doesn't have a ton of information or custom fields in it the way that I've built it, but let's do that again. Let's delete that. And we'll pull in a different one that has a little bit more info in it. So let's do BTC02. Okay, so that one pulled in all the client's information, their name, email, phone number. This one is going to I believe this was to the escrow, attorney, escrow, or title person, whoever your contact is for closing. So you're conveying to them all the information. If you want to give them any compensation information, this is all customizable. So you can choose to give them compensation information or not give them compensation information, whatever they would need. How the buyer is getting their deposit to them. You can make a section like this in any of your templates that is editable. So each transaction maybe is a little bit different for you, where some of the escrow funds or the closing funds, deposit funds, are dropped off at title. Some are wired, whatever it is, you can make those edits, or maybe every single time they're always wired, you can just write that into the template. So that's just easy. And then contract details, there's purchase price, initial deposit amount, contract acceptance date. You can pre-populate all of those fields from the custom fields that you've just typed in once at the onset of the contract command. So really, really fast to send out a bunch of these email templates. If you had, like, for instance, 3 that needed to go out to intro everybody, send a copy of the contract to the buyer, it becomes extremely fast to send those out, and those can all be tasked to send out. I like to task them to send out, and instead of putting them as an automated email in the action plan, because there's just so many variables and transactions just have so many different turns and twists they can take. So I really like a human to review the checklist item and then make a decision to send the template, verify the information is correct in the template, and shoot it off. And that whole process is very quick. So that's an example about how the email templates work. Again, this is something that any FollowUpBoss user can put in place themselves. The basics would be, again, set up your deal stages, get task checklists set up for buyers and sellers. You want to keep the task group by type and assignments. And then create email templates for all emails and texts. The part of the email process is to create the custom fields that you would want to pull into the email templates. Any FollowUpBoss user can do that from the admin account. And then track deals in your dashboard. So getting all your deals set up inside of your FollowUpBoss dashboard here in the deals section is sort of like the final step, or you can do that first. There's making sure that you set up your deal stages as first. However, getting your deals into the deal cards is what I would recommend, so that you have everything in there to start using the transaction checklist on. So, quick overview of the benefits of a system like this built in FollowUpBoss. You can scale it to hundreds of transactions and dozens of agents. So anyone who's a FollowUpBoss user in the system can be assigned tasks, or you can manage transactions for them. So super, super customizable in that way. As far as like if you're a team of 1 or a team of 100, there's the ability to do that. As long as your admins and agents all have FollowUpBoss seats. The admins and agents report saving like around 3 hours a file. That's direct information from my team who's been using this, and we've now closed over 2,000 transactions. So it's a very time-saving system to set up. You're able to get out of having multiple monthly costly platforms. So most people are able to just go to using that FollowUpBoss account for everything, instead of having 7 different softwares that they're paying for, or different logins and logouts for all the different features of some of the checklists. Some of the checklists are transaction management softwares. Communication becomes uniform and scripted. I would say that's like my number one favorite thing about this, is that when you want to make sure that buyers are getting reminded that there's certain certain inspections that they should be doing on their property, you can script that so that it happens every single time, no matter what, that you remind them to do that. Cutting communication mistakes in half would be an understatement. I would say that it's even more than that, because you won't have typos, you won't have data that's incorrect. It will just make everything so much more streamlined for you, because it's all there in one page. So that results in faster closing times, fewer client issues, happier agents, better compliance scores. So reviews and things like that are always going to come in better. Your compliance with your broker is going to be better, because you're reminded to do things instead of them having to remind you. And then that equals more repeat and referral business. So I mentioned it earlier, but I was reached out to by many agents across the country when I started talking about how my team was managing transactions and saving time and money by just doing all of this in FollowUpBoss. And I was unable to keep up with those who wanted help with this. So I partnered with Key Technology Solutions, and Elena and her team are now able to install this transaction build in FollowUpBoss, similar to how they do their revamp or some of the other products that you might be familiar with that they offer. And we install it into your system. We help you fully customize it to your state. Are you attorney, title, escrow? We have some great little enhancements that we review with you to help you get dialed in for the area of the country that you're in. And then we have 90 days of support to help you customize the email templates, checklist templates, everything that's pre-built in there so that you can make sure that it fits your voice and your state and your transaction timelines. So it's a super fast way for you to get up and running with a system like this. It's a one-time charge, and they would love to speak with anyone who has an interest in doing that. Obviously, you can build this yourself, but it's a really great time saver if you say, wow, this is amazing and I'd love to save the money, but I don't want to build it myself. So that's a great option for you if you'd like to learn more. We'll have a link shared with the webinar. And I think that's it for today. That's everything that I have. I am very grateful that you were here to watch today, and thank you so much for learning about ways that you can be more successful using FollowUpBoss to manage transactions. Thanks again. Talk soon.